Okay, so I wanted to do a deconstruction of sound and art, industrial noise, all that good stuff, because I think that there is a very huge disconnection. A lot of people do not quite understand the process, and I think that if I simplify it and just go through it real quick, for how my philosophy looks when it comes to the art I make and like minimalism and, let's just go through all of this real quick. So, on a very basic level, on a very tasteful level, like on taste level, the reason I like a lot of the stuff I like is mostly because of texture and how it is immersive, on a sound level, how I use my imagination, and how I sort of use it to hypnotize myself in a sort of hypnagogic state. I like to imagine worlds, through these sounds, great example, MB, Maurizio Banerjee, industrial tape, mortar unter uns, neurohabitat, Regal. There are so many tapes, actually. Armageddon's a really good one. So I really like to imagine myself in like these abandoned or empty industrial yards, and I think that a lot of this stuff is really easy to relate back to dreams. Now, I think that that's pretty much the cutoff for the reason I like all this stuff. I love the immersiveness and the texture of the sound. It's minimal, it's droning, it's something to close your eyes to and just feel, It's like a good movie, but it's mostly in my head. That's how I like it. I like it very loose and abstract and open for interpretation. Now, I do want to go over some of the philosophical implications of the work that I put out, and this is going to be more intense, but I've been thinking quite a bit about what my art means on a deeper, level. So, my sound represents something of a decay in culture, and this is the philosophical dissection of my work, by the way. This isn't like the subjective. This is the subjective on how you interpret it, but this is how I interpret it. I think that I overlap a lot of like 1980s horror, how the rise of body horror, and how horror was so in tune with the contemporary struggle, but anyway, I think that I make a sort of abstract horror, a metaphorical horror. I use a lot of low resolution photos, and what I call those low resolution photos is digital decay. I consider my aesthetic to be digital decay, and low resolution to me, metaphorically is like a sort of digital gore, So you can take that with how you will, like you can compare it to the gore you find on the internet, or you can compare it to the gore you find in the flesh. I talk a lot about, or I am very interested in representing the body, in metaphorical ways. I think that all my work ties back to the body, and it's been tying back to the body for years now. ever since I first started my music, it's always tied back to the flesh. There's other themes that are continuous through my work, like perceiving and eyes, and could you tie that back to identity? I think that's very important to consider. I don't really want to go through my own view on identity, but I think that that's very important to take into consideration through your own perspective, because I think that everyone can, relate to identity and perception, and the I don't know how to say it. There's a word that I'm looking. The relationship between the two through identity and perception. I don't want to sound, bad, but I think since, around 2017, I've always put subliminal, messages, something that's very nuanced, very quiet, very secretive to the phallic, and I think that that's just more building on to the body and flesh. And you can say that's also for my inspiration from media like Videodrome and, all those body horror films that I've watched. And, it's like, I think Videodrome is such a perfect example of my work. It's like you have the postmodern, you have the television, you have the philosophy, you have the perception, you have the flesh. I think flesh is very important for very many reasons. And I think that people should consider perceiving the world through the flesh, because it's very important to know where we are as individuals and where we are in our placement in the world, because a lot of people, they are very fascinated by destruction. I don't know. I think this all plays back into itself. Now, I think this is what noise and industrial really means to me. I'm telling a story of minimalism, and, I think that there's a lot of things you have to consider when it comes to my work, and it might not be the most thought-provoking or well, it is pretty challenging, but it might not be the most, technically, impressive work ever, and I know that might be a turnoff for a lot of people, but this is a deconstruction of how I got to where I am. This is my reflection as of now on what this music means to me, and, I think that there's little parts of me everywhere, and I can find something new every time, because I think that I come back to give this to the work I make. And the sad part is that sometimes it's really hard to sell people on this stuff, but I'm hoping that this will open someone's eyes to understand why I do what I do, because sometimes it's just hard to communicate this. This is a very postmodern reflection on what I do. There's a lot more reasons why I do what I do. You have the human element. I told somebody the other day, a lot of this stuff is about texture and sound and atmosphere, and it's not only a collection of my dreams, and how I reflect on my dreams, and, music directly inspired by my dream journals that I keep every night. But it's also a collection of little vignettes of memories I have growing up. Like when I was hanging out with my aunt at night, and we went to the sand dunes, and we climbed these sand dunes, and I found pollution, little balloons outside or whatever, and it's just all I don't know. I was spending a lot of time with my grandparents, my granddad recently passed away, and I've been going through my work and reliving that nostalgia, and it's a really sad feeling, and I don't know, there's so much, things to talk about through my music, but I just wish that the stories that I told would resonate with someone, so maybe that they could apply what they feel, and what they've learned to appreciate to other forms of art that are a little more complex to get into. I think that that's the most fun thing you can do is search as hard as you can for music and art, and it's find new stuff and sit with it and learn it and figure out what makes it work for you. It's a personal thing you have to overcome, and you can't do it with anyone else. People will give me music recommendations, and it's a personal journey I have to overcome to understand what the fuck does this mean, for me. I listen to the recommendations, but sometimes it's just really hard to come over that first initial, barrier, and I think that that's a big thing for me, at least. I don't know if it's for other people, but I feel it all the time that it's a constant struggle to be another person, because a lot of people have to overcome their own biases and learn how to personally perceive something that's important to them, like the company of new people or new music or new movies. But anyway, I hope this was a sufficient, talk about what Scum Alice means to me as an individual, and some deconstruction here and there, and some deconstruction of entire cultural, points. I don't know, it's fun talking about this sort of stuff, and I think that this is one of the more complex more complex discussions that I've put out so far, because I think that it's very important that you guys sit with it and take in every angle of what this could mean, But thank you for listening so much. If you want to stay around, stick around, hang out and listen to some music. I love doing it, and I am so grateful for everyone to be around.